What's up, y'all? We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am your hope everybody has had a great week so far. A little bit of a wonky schedule this week. We talked about it yesterday, but Wednesday, Thursday this week, we'll be going live Thursday and Friday next week. Going to enjoy a little bit of time off for my 30th birthday, which is pretty crazy. Spent my entire 20s writing about the CSU Rams. No regrets or anything like that. Obviously, very fortunate to be in this position. Fortunate to be able to bring you guys CSU content. It means a lot to me. But I've definitely been introspective lately and just kind of looking back at how much has changed both with me and with this show and with my career and all kinds of stuff, going from, a babyface collegiate reporter to what we've established now. It's been a pretty crazy ride. And I'm definitely thankful for all of you guys for making it possible. Got a fun show for you guys today. We're going to talk the latest recruiting news for CSU football, talk about Arley Morrell, the most recent 2026 commit, intriguing tight end prospect out of Kansas. We'll kind of take a look at that 2026 class as a whole so far. I'll also give out some names for you guys to keep an eye on, some people that CSU is in the mix with, some people that will be taking visits upcoming. So we'll talk about all that at the very end, depending on how long we ramble about all this stuff. We're going to get into my personal Colorado summer power rankings, just my favorite spots around the state. I did omit Fort Collins and Denver just because that kind of felt like cheating. I lived there, but we'll get into all that as the show goes on. First things first, I do want to shout out Nevada Sportsnet for giving us some summer content. It's admittedly a little bit slower of a time in the schedule. There's not quite as much going on. There was a press conference actually with Maya Lessner and some of the track stars this morning that conflicted with this show, which was kind of a bummer. I would have liked to have been able to hear what those guys had to say. But Kevin Lytle's there, I know, and I'm looking forward to reading his coverage from it. Like I said, I want to shout out Nevada Sportsnet. They came out with a preseason quarterback tier system, and Chris Murray also just ranked the quarterbacks in his opinion across the league. I disagree. I want to make it clear from the beginning that this segment isn't supposed to be a gotcha moment or anything like that. This isn't Receipt Street or anything corny. It's just me giving my perspective on the quarterback position going into the season, where BFN kind of factors into this conversation, why I feel he's admittedly a little bit disrespected. I do think that both from a national standpoint and even a local standpoint, I think CSU fans are really hard on the quarterback, and they have been my entire life. I mean, I've spent a lot of my existence as a CSU supporter basically trying to explain that, in my opinion, the quarterback is better than the general masses are giving them credit to be. And I think back to Todd Centeio, and while I don't think he was a superstar or an NFL prospect or anything like that, I would just constantly point out the flaws in Adazio's scheme and essentially how they weren't setting him up for success. I remember when I was at the Collegian consistently writing in favor of Nick Stevens, a player to this day who I still feel like is underrated. Was he ever going to be an NFL star? No. But people forget Nick Stevens was first team all conference in 2017 over Brett Rippon and Josh Allen. And I think people really do forget how good he was, but the entire time he was the quarterback, it felt like people were kind of clamoring for more. I'm not really sure what it is about the position. I mean, high standards. There have been some studs that have played the position over the years for sure. You look back at the the Moses Morenos of the world. BVP is a 2-time all-conference player. Kelly Stoffer, obviously a first-round pick in the 80s. I mean, there have been some studs to play the position. I just think at times we can be pretty hypercritical as a fan base. I think we fixate on the negative at times, and I think we overlook a lot of positive. Maybe that's just sports fans in general. Maybe that's just how it all works in 2025. But I do feel like BFN does not get the credit he deserves. I did really enjoy this article from Chris Murray. Again, like my perspective on a lot of this is far different than his, and I definitely have a lot of deferment when it comes to how I would put all of this. That didn't make sense. You know what I mean? I definitely disagree on his rankings, but I just want to make that clear. Like, this isn't me trying to be like, you guys should all go at him or anything like that. This is his perspective. Mine is different. Before he did do just a straight 1 through 12 ranking, he did point out that it's been a rough stretch in terms of the Mountain West producing high caliber quarterbacks in recent years. Had a nice run there where you had a couple of first round picks in Jordan Love out of Utah State, Josh Allen, obviously out of Wyoming. But it's been a minute since they've had one of those guys that's really revered nationally and is kind of potentially in, like the Heisman conversation. They don't have, in his opinion, a tier 1 quarterback. I would agree with that. He has Maddox Madsen at Boise State as his top quarterback in the league. He has him as the only quarterback in what he views as tier 2 or a championship caliber quarterback, somebody who's won a conference championship. So I guess you can't really argue with that based on what he has accomplished thus far. I would point out there's some important context missing there, like Ashton Genty, the best running back in the league, potentially even in the country. But he does have BFN in what he has listed as tier 3 experienced quarterbacks with question marks. This is what he wrote about Brayden. Fowler-Nicolosi is a third-year starter for the Rams looking to bounce back from a poor 2024. He was better in 2023, but threw a league-high 16 interceptions that year. In his career, he's completed 60.8% of his passes for 6,400 yards with 37 touchdowns and 27 interceptions in 28 games. Those are solid numbers, but not the production you want in an air raid offense, as CSU leaned more on its rushing attack late last year to compensate. Well, they never really ran an air raid offense last year, first of all, and that's something we've talked a lot about is, yes, Brayden's passing numbers dipped from 2023 to 2024 in terms of passing yards, touchdowns, all of that. He also had far less opportunities to throw the football last year, which, if you get less attempts, your numbers naturally are going to go down. They did lean into that West Coast scheme. They were more of a ground and pound offense. It was definitely far from what we envisioned when Jay Norvell came over from Nevada, particularly coming off of the Carson Strong era where they threw the ball over the field. And, we got a front row seat of that at CSU those last couple of years. They really thumped the Rams. We had all kind of envisioned that, this aggressive vertical passing offense, a lot more like the traditional air raid. It's never really been that for a variety of reasons. On 2022, they just didn't have the bodies. They didn't have the depth at receiver or in the trenches to make it happen. Clay Millen took an absolute beating. Bless his heart, that dude got rocked consistently, and then I think he kind of got in his own head. So at that point, it was kind of a lost cause. Obviously, they end up making the switch to BFN in 2023. It was closer to an air raid, but it still wasn't like a true traditional air raid in that sense. Like they haven't ever really had the wide receiver room to be that type of offense. And I am somewhat optimistic going into this year based on a variety of factors, and we'll kind of get into all that. But Chris has Brayden as the 6th best quarterback in the Mountain West going into the preseason. And I just don't see how logically you can have him that low. If you want to say Maddox Madsen's number 1, based on him being able to beat out a former 5-star in Malachi Nelson, based on him doing what they needed him to do last year to get it done, to get to the playoffs, sure, he had some nice moments, but if we're talking arm potential or, the ability to rip it downfield or anything like that, I'm not sure Madsen's even in the top half of the league from a physical ability standpoint. I just think he's flawed. Now, he does seem like a prototypical popular player with the quarterback coach, somebody who's highly intelligent. I'm sure he knows that scheme inside and out. You don't really have to worry about his decision making or anything like that. But Maddox Madsen isn't somebody who's going to drop back and single-handedly beat you with his arm. He's somebody who, if you put him in the right situation and you scheme up everything perfectly around him, and you've got elite talent in the backfield, which Boise will have once again this year, they're going to be able to lean on that ground game. The defense overcommits. Can Madsen be somebody who's effective off of play action, who's going to take those easy throws? Yeah, he can be that guy. And he honestly had some moments in those bigger games where he made some throws that surprised me. So maybe I should give him a little bit more credit than I am. But as Dylan says in the Toyota chat, just think Madsen is a little bit overrated. I would agree with you. If you're going second, I think Brayden has a pretty strong case, in my opinion, if you're not putting him as the number one. I mean, from a physical tool standpoint, Brayden's far superior to Maddox Madsen. Now, he hasn't had the success, from that standpoint, and that's fair to point out. It's also fair to point out the talent around Madsen probably a little bit deeper, than what BFN's had around him. Didn't have Ashton Jeanty in that backfield. But some of the guys that are listed above Brayden here, I just don't really understand. You've got Chubba Purdy of Nevada, younger brother of Brock Purdy, a guy who couldn't even beat out Brendan Lewis for the starting gig. I mean, he's ahead of BFN. I guess I don't really see how that checks. Walker Eget, another guy who had some nice numbers at times, but wasn't even the full-time starting quarterback for San Jose State last year. They also had Emmett Brown, who played quite a bit. Micah Alejandro is going to be a redshirt freshman for Hawaii. He'll be their starter. He started one career game, and he put up some nice numbers against New Mexico in that matchup, but a guy with one start under his belt, you have him listed higher than what will be the most experienced quarterback in the Mountain West. I would push back on that. And even EJ Warner, who has started for two different teams and who, along with Brayden, is the most experienced, coming into the league. But he led the American in interceptions 3 straight years, which is something that Murray pointed out. There's a reason the guy's at his third school in 4 years. It didn't work out at Rice. It didn't work out at Temple for a reason. Never been the quarterback of a winning team. I guess I would just say that I understand his last name is Warner and all that. Kurt was a great story, NFL Hall of Famer. We all know the deal. But to have him listed above Brayden too, I would say that's skeptical at best. So I just don't see how you can realistically or fairly say that Brayden is anything other than a top 3 quarterback, at least in the preseason. Now, there's a lot that needs to be proven by him this year, and we'll get into all of that. Like, it's a big year, and we've talked about that from Jay Norvell's standpoint, just where the program's at, like defining his own legacy, locking down a contract extension, all of that. It's a make or break year for Norvell. It's a make or break year for BFN in some sense too. He's getting up there, obviously, in terms of age and at the college, in terms of being a college quarterback, you know what I mean? But I just think, like, based on the inexperience of the league, arguing anything otherwise really is kind of absurd. Now, does Brayden need to kind of take the best of both worlds from these last 2 seasons? Can he build on some of the restraint that he showed, granted, in an offense that kind of didn't give him a choice? It shackled him a little bit. But can he take the pros from that, essentially the decision making? He cut back on some of the turnovers, which are at times overblown anyways from 2023. I think people fixate on that unnecessarily. But can he take what he learned from that and also lean into the athletic traits that make him dangerous? Because he's got a really big arm. He's a big, strong kid. I think he runs better than he's generally given credit for, and I actually would like to see CSU take advantage of that a little bit more. They started to do it for a couple weeks, doing some play action rollout stuff last year, and then just kind of abandoned it. I don't know if that was a personnel issue, injuries, or what, but I do think that's something that could open up the offense and kind of allow him to take advantage of the arm strength, and especially with what I think will be a really well-rounded group around him at the skill positions. Like, that's a spot where you could really take advantage. But I just don't understand why people are quite so hypercritical of him. Like, I just think that he's shown a lot, and yeah, there have been times where he hasn't been his best. I've pointed back to, like 2023 in Laramie and Wyoming. That was not a good showing. He wasn't great in the bowl game. There were a lot of factors that worked against him in that bowl game. Didn't really have a true starting receiver out there. But there have been moments where he hasn't been his best. There's also been moments like in Boulder, first career start, and not technically first career start. He started in Nevada the year before, but first start of the season, and he goes out and balls in front of millions of people. Obviously, they don't win that game in the end, but I just thought he showed a lot in terms of the swagger that he brought to the table, coming off of Clay Millen, who is, and I don't mean to say this in a disrespectful manner, but a bit of I want to say wet blanket, but that seems far harsher than what I'm trying to imply. He didn't have the attitude or the mentality that got people to buy into him or inspired hope or confidence for the offense. He was just kind of shy, and I think he was in his own head after taking a beating. Like, there's a lot of factors that you should consider there. But Brayden came in, and you immediately felt the vibe kind of switch with that offense, and all of a sudden it was like, all right, like, this is going to be a team that can move the ball a little bit. And obviously they did that. Defensively kind of got let down a couple times in what could have been wins, but I think there's a chance going into year 3 that we really see Brayden unleashed, and we're going to keep talking about this before we get into some of the recruiting stuff. We are going to take a quick break real quick, shout out a couple of our partners, and then we'll keep this combo rolling. The NFL schedule is here, and I'm already planning out my fall. There's going to be some pretty fun Broncos home games. You get to see number 1 pick Cam Ward come to town. Got the Cowboys coming to town. I think the Steelers might be coming to town this year as well. Some really fun opportunities to hit up Mile High, and with Game Time, it's the best way to get tickets faster and easier than ever. They've got exclusive discounts. They've got an app that's really easy to use and makes the whole ticket buying process so much easier. As a consumer, you can get a panoramic view before you purchase. With the Game Time Picks curation function, it makes it easier than ever to save on sports, on concerts, on comedy, on theater. You name it, they have got it. The all-in pricing feature is awesome. You're not going to get hit with a bunch of last-minute fees at the end. The price you see is the price you get. They've got the lowest price guarantee as well. Game Time ticket coverage means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code DNVR for $20 off your purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Coors Light encourages you to choose a chill mindset. Life is going to test you. Getting worked up, it rarely helps anything. I've had a couple instances lately where I've done that. I've gotten just I don't know, a little angry, a little frustrated, lose my cool here and there, and then afterwards I just sit there and shake my head because not only was that situation unresolved, but now I'm just stressed and embarrassed. Nothing ever good comes out of that. Out of getting worked up, I'm working on it. It's a constant battle. You're always trying to be a little bit better every single day. Do the little things, get exercise, eat right. Get out in nature. And then, once I do put myself in the right state of mind, when I'm kicking back, when I'm chilling, maybe I'm going to crack open an ice cold Coors Light. When the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. All right. I know we were kind of all over the place there. I had my plan for this conversation mapped out, and then I started kind of going all over the place. But that happens on the pod occasionally. Easy to get sidetracked. Basically, my point in all of this is that based on previous results and just general levels of experience, at worst, BFN should be considered a top 3 quarterback in the league going into the season. And I just really feel like I just really feel like from an arm talent standpoint, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody better around the league. And yes, while the passing numbers did take a dip last year, when you look across the conference, it's not like he was this significant outlier or anything like that. He was still top 3 in passing yards at just under 2,800 yards. Maddox Madsen had 3,018. He was still top 3 in QBR. 14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I mean, Mikey Keene only had 18 and 11. Dampier was 12 and 12. Braden Shaker, 19 and 13. I mean, he really was on par with the rest of the conference. Now, that's not to say that the Mountain West has had, again, like a ton of banner quarterback prospects over the last half decade. You're hoping that BFN can show more and kind of elevate his status and really affirm himself as one of those top quarterbacks in the league, potentially even be the first preseason or first postseason player. Oh my goodness, first player to earn postseason awards at the position since Nick Stevens back in 2017. But we'll see. Like I said, it's kind of a prove it year for him. I do think that having a deeper receiver group around him should be very beneficial. One of the tough things, and I've talked about this so much, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but when you put all your eggs in one basket and then that basket breaks, right away, that puts you in a tough spot. They were really planning on these last couple of years of being able to lean on Torrey Horton. Unfortunately, due to injuries, he was kind of on and off the field in 2023, basically missed the entire season in 2024. You developed some chemistry with Caleb Goody and Jamari Person. What did they do? They hit the portal before we even get to the bowl game. Like, a lot of those factors, on top of just getting less passing opportunities, being in a scheme that limits your chance to stretch the field vertically, like, that's going to limit the type of numbers you put up. And when you factor all of that and you compare his numbers to the other quarterbacks around the league, I don't know if all of these other quarterbacks are getting the same type of scrutiny. And now maybe you could point to some of the posturing that like Norvell did in the media. Brayden talked a lot in the media as well. Obviously, people on the CU side love to throw those clips of him and Torrey back in their faces. Like, would he have benefited from maybe just being a little bit quieter going into the season and kind of going about his business, letting his play do the talking, and instead of, giving them ammo with those clips? Yeah, without a doubt. That's anybody inherently. That's what I'm always going to say about any player on the team. Like, don't give anybody a reason to clap back. And he did that. Now, do I think that people were way too harsh on him for it? Yeah. Do I think that a lot of those clips were shared out of context weeks after the interviews, knowing that they would stir some stuff up? Probably so. But like, you can point to all those. He talked a lot, and it maybe put a little bit of a target on his back. But I thought as the season progressed, especially, I thought he showed a lot of maturity, and I don't think it was an easy position he was in, basically changing the entire offensive scheme from the air raid to a more West Coast based style, like 10 days before the season opened. You go into that Texas matchup, just get absolutely thumped, really never even give them an opportunity to try and do anything in the passing game. They pretty much just punted on that matchup. And I really hope that this fall they don't take that same approach. I hope that they don't take the Washington game and approach things like they did against Texas, because one, I think if you're going to have any chance of pulling the upset, you got to be aggressive. You got to get them back on their heels. You got to go out and make plays. You can't just hope they're going to do nothing all game and you're going to grind out like a 9-6 win or something like that. It's just not realistic. When you're 3 touchdown dogs, you got to go out and make something happen for yourself. But I think it would just be big from a confidence standpoint if they could get him going early in that passing attack. I think they have some games that could be challenging, but are very winnable in Washington State and UTSA and even Washington. Like, do I expect to win that game on the road? No, I don't. But do I think it could be possible? Do I think it could be a Boston College type situation? Yeah, I do, because I think on paper there's a lot of reason to believe in the potential of this offense. And if it's going to reach its full capability, that's going to be really dependent on Brayden having the best season of his career. I think there's a chance for him to do it, though. There are a lot of factors that go into that. How's the offensive line going to hold up? The O-line the last couple of years has been steady. It hasn't been phenomenal, obviously, compared to what it was in 2022. Took major steps in the right direction, and I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say, about the direction of the group. I think they've done a good job of recruiting guys and developing them, and a lot of these guys that are coming up through the programs, the Tanner Morleys of the world, the Ader Burian-Cheas of the world, I think they're going to be pretty solid players, and I'm pretty excited about their capability. But you're losing 3 starters from last year's line. Those are guys that gave you a lot of reps these last couple of years. So how does this group hold up as far as what they showed in the spring? You feel okay, but I've been pretty open about this. You can't take too dramatic of takeaways from spring. You've basically got to take everything with a grain of salt. And we'll learn a lot more about this team, come camp, as we get closer to the regular season. But how's that O-line going to hold up? How does the receiver group hold up? Who is able to kind of take that next step? You're excited about Jordan Ross. You're excited about Tommy Maher and Tay Lanier, but you don't have the star power of somebody like Torrey Horton. So it's going to have to kind of be a collective effort. I think it'll be closer to a situation where you've got 4, 5, 6 guys with like 400 to 750 yards. I don't think anybody's going to rack up 100 catches or anything like that. But I think you're going to have a lot of different guys that are able to have a nice role in this offense. I like the group of receivers they have. Maybe you don't have the top end talent of a Torrey Horton, although Jordan Ross I do think could be pretty dang good. I think as a whole, this group is far more well-rounded, and especially when you factor in the tight ends. I mean, Jackson Warren with Rocky Beers is going to be the best 1-2 punch they've had at tight end since you probably had Kevon Cartwright and Crockett Gilmore out there together. I mean, Trey is obviously in his own category. Dallin was great, but they didn't have a 1-2 punch at the position like they do this year. I think those guys are probably going to be 2 of your 5 most productive pass catchers. I would bet that both of them, get like 4+ touchdowns. I just think they've got a lot more options, and I think that is going to give Brayden the ability to spread the ball around more. It's going to give them the ability to attack more of the field. You're going to be able to use more of the middle of the field again, which was an element that was lacking last year. It was lacking in 2022 as well. Having Dallin Holker be that safety blanket that you can consistently move the sticks with, who you can dump the ball to underneath, and the tight ends they have now, you can do that too, but you're also going to be able to throw it up and let them go get it. I like the possibility of that. On top of that, I'm interested to see, obviously, what it's like from a play calling standpoint. I've stood behind my reporting from the beginning that Matt Mumme is going to be involved in that. It's been kind of weird how CSU has handled things. Jay has been pretty coy and arguably even defensive when asked about it. When I was on the Ram Nation podcast with Brayden Fowler-Nicolosi and Joel, BFN was like, I don't know what I'm allowed to say publicly. It's an odd deal, admittedly. I don't know if they're just kind of trying to keep it back for a strategic standpoint or what they're doing. But I do think that Mumme, whether he's the solo play caller or if it's just a collaborative effort and he's a little bit more involved, I think that'll benefit the offense and Brayden too. Those two really click based on everything that Brayden's told me, based on everything I've heard behind the scenes too. The relationship that Mumme has with BFN and Jackson Brousseau, really the whole quarterback room, it's solid. And frankly, I think it's the reason that a lot of those quarterbacks have stuck around these last couple of years, despite there never really being a true open competition at the position. Brousseau objectively has really never had a chance to push for the starting gig, but the relationships in that room have always been solid, and Mumme's really popular. I've also heard that it was Mumme who was calling the plays, back in that crazy comeback against Boise State in 2023. He and BFN just really see things similarly based on what I've heard. And I just think that's a relationship that could potentially bring the best out of Brayden this fall. Just Mummy knowing the strengths and weaknesses of Brayden, and also just from a team standpoint, I've talked about this a lot. I just think it would benefit Jay Norvell to be able to take a step back and have that CEO style approach where your hand is in everything. You're going to be highly involved in offense, defense, and special teams, but you can also think more big picture, and you can manage the entire game and the chaos that happens along the sidelines without having to worry about the duty of play calling, which is very intensive. Like it just objectively, it's a really hard thing to do. There have been very few coaches that have been great play callers and also great game managers. There's just so much to balance all in a short little time span, and I just think that all those factors combined could potentially lead to a breakout year for Brayden. And I'm excited about his potential this year. I've pointed out the games he struggled. I've pointed out the areas he needs to improve. I've talked about the footwork and how I'd like to see him clean some stuff up. But the truth is he can do some pretty remarkable things with the football. I mean, his arm talent is NFL level. His ability to work both sidelines, that's not something every quarterback in college is able to do. He's shown incredible touch on the deep ball. What I would like to see from him this year is just be more consistent with some of the easier stuff. And I think if he's able to do that, I think if they're able to run the ball and the O-line holds up, like I really do think there's a strong possibility that this is the best the offense has looked in the Norvell era. When you factor in all the experience, when you factor in the talent around him, like on paper, I think it lines up well. But I think Ram fans need to cut him a little bit of slack here and there. And like he obviously hasn't been 2014 Grayson mastering that offense under McElwain. There is another level that I would like to see him take it to. But especially like when you look around the league and stuff, and you look at his numbers compared to a Mikey Keynes, who's probably going to start at Michigan, like you could do far, far worse at the QB position than Brayden going into year 3. And I hope it all works out for him. I'd like to see him put it all together. I respect that he's been loyal to CSU, through all this, had the opportunity to leave a couple of times, has stood by the program. And obviously I believe in his arm talent. So, the best thing that could happen for CSU this year would be Brayden popping off and having the best season of his career, because it's going to directly translate to CSU, being in contention for a conference championship. That's really the difference, I think. If you can be more explosive and create more havoc defensively, create more turnovers, get after the quarterback more, be more dependable in some of those clutch game situations as well. But then offensively, if you can just strike a lot more fear into the opponent, get a lot more explosive plays down the field, I think that's going to be the difference. Like last year, they were a little bit more consistent with being able to maintain possession, third and short type situations. They were a lot better there than they were the couple years before. You want to build off of that, but you don't want it to be at the expense of what made the offense exciting in the first place, which is that ability to stretch the field and spreading the ball around and, using the quick passing games and mesh and everything else to keep people off balance. I think there's a strong chance the offense takes a major step in the right direction. But again, like that all kind of comes down to Brayden reaching his full potential. And I think for him to do that, there's some other factors, like the scheme, like who's calling plays, like, who's out there around him that need to all fall the right way as well. But again, to say that Brayden is the 6th best quarterback going into the league, like Nevada Sportsnet did, I don't really understand the logic behind that. And especially when you look at the guys that they put over him, I would really push back on that. Like they're putting him in the conversation with Alex Orji, a guy who literally couldn't complete a forward pass at Michigan, and Caden Anderson. I mean, he's got like 2 starts to his name. Anderson's actually kind of intriguing at Wyoming. But I would just say at worst, he's the 3rd best quarterback in the league. And that's not even me being a homer or anything like that. Like, I think you really could make a compelling case from an arm talent standpoint, from an experience standpoint, that Brayden should be one on this list. Like, if you want to put Madsen just based on the success that Boise has had with him as the starter, I think that's fair. Tough for me to push back on that, other than I would just point out that, is Madsen the reason that Boise has had that offensive success? No. Is he the reason they were in the playoff? Definitely not. But the guy has won a lot. I will give credit where it's due in that aspect. All right, we're going to move on. If you've got any questions, comments, keep them rolling our way in the Toyota chat. I will respond to as many as I can. If I don't get to it right away, we can always come back to it and get to it a little bit later. Let's take a break real quick, though, and shout out a couple more partners. Timeouts are for sports, not banking. That's why First Bank offers you tools and service to take control of the money wherever you are. With their secure, easy-to-use mobile banking app, you can check your balance, pay friends, stay on top of your money anytime, anywhere. It's banking that moves with you. Here's something extra. Open a new First Bank checking account and you can earn $300. It's a simple way to kickstart better banking and enjoy a little reward for making a smart money move. If you're ready to take banking to the next level, check efirstbank.com/bonus. That's efirstbank.com/bonus to learn more and get started. Better banking is just a few steps away with First Bank. Certain restrictions and requirements to apply. Member FDIC. All right, we've all been there. You think you've got the perfect parlay cooked up. You're already thinking about how you're going to spend your winnings. That's a classic rookie mistake, by the way. You're just tempting the gods to come back at you. But you think you've got your parlay all lined up, and then boom, that Pac-12 after dark slate, it kills you. The team you pick doesn't cover, or, it's summer, so it's baseball. The relief pitcher for the Rockies just gets shelled in the ninth inning. Boom, all of a sudden your parlay is cooked. The Hall of Fame app is built to help you fix that. It was started by two lifelong sports fans who happen to be Ivy League grads. And Hall of Fame makes parlay research smarter, faster, and data-driven. This isn't, your buddy in the group chat, yo, I've got the perfect bet, why don't you tell me? It's not a chat full of hot takes. It's an analytics engine. And it gives you access to all kinds of cool stuff. Historical data, advanced stats, powerful tools to help you bet smarter. It was built for the everyday sports fan, so it's easy to use. Even dummies like me can go on there and have fun. You can also design a bet and upload it straight to your betting app through the Hall of Fame app. It's really cool. For a limited time only, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, they also get 50% off their first month when they use the code DNVR at checkout. Just download the Hall of Fame app on iOS and Android, or visit halloffamebets.com. That's HOFbets.com. Enter the code DNVR and you are all set. All right, we've got RK's forehead in the Toyota chat. I thought CSU was going to the Pac-12 this year. Can't get over the image. This is their last year in the Mountain West, so they officially filed notice before June 1st, which they had to in order to avoid their exit fees doubling. But the media rights agreement for the league was through the 2026 season. So CSU will have one last season in the Mountain West for football and basketball, and then they'll be going on to the Pac-12 with Boise State, with San Diego State, Utah State, Gonzaga, etc. Honestly, I wish they were just going to the Pac-12 this year. I think it's going to be really weird and maybe a tad anticlimactic in the conference this year, just knowing what's coming next. But maybe it'll result in some drama too. So I guess we'll have to see. From a content creation standpoint, I guess I should never complain too much about the possibility of having more storylines to focus on. But let's get into the latest recruiting news. We admittedly dragged that first segment on a little bit further than I intended to, but I'm a rambler. It's what I do. If you listen to the show by now, you're well aware. Let's talk about this 2026 class, though. I'm actually going to have some written content coming out on the recruiting side. I know it's been a little bit, needed just a little bit of a chance to reset the battery. That NHL playoff run I covered was exhausting. That coming off of, March Madness and basketball, which comes directly off of football, I'd been going nonstop since really like mid-July last year, but have some fun stuff I've been working on this week that's about to come out. I'm excited for you guys to get into it. I might do a little bit of written content, setting the scene for women's hoops and volleyball this year too. We're not going to write about them all season or anything like that, but I'm going to try and get some more feature stories out. We obviously talk about them on the podcast when we can. very much value those programs. I try and support the whole athletic department as best as I can. Although obviously our main focus is obviously always going to be football and basketball. Um, Getting back on track, talking 2026 class for CSU football. If you missed it, Arley Morrell, 6'6", 205-pound tight end, 3-star prospect according to 247 and On3. He committed to CSU yesterday from Pratt, Kansas. I kind of like that CSU has been recruiting Kansas a little bit heavier in the Norvell era. You got the Vincent brothers. They've signed a couple kids. Brayden Hales, offensive lineman last cycle. Now you've got Morrell on board as a commit. I have a soft spot in my heart for Kansas. I have a lot of family in Western Kansas, which admittedly there's not a lot going on out there. I don't think there's going to be a lot of paintings, of the Kansas scenery, anything like that. Although some sunsets out there in the plains, it is underrated. Having said all that, the point of this is that I have a lot of family in Kansas, and they do all of their vacationing where in Colorado, and there's a reason. They want to get out of Kansas. They want to see the gorgeous state that is Colorado, and I think that's a recruiting advantage if you're CSU. A lot of these farm kids, and I'm speaking very generally here, but a lot of them, they want to get out a little bit. They don't want to be too far from family, though. They want to be able to come back. They want their family to be able to come to games as well. And if you're CSU, it's kind of a perfect situation. Like, you can get kids out of Kansas. We've still got some ag roots in FOCO, but you get to see all of the gorgeousness, that is Horsetooth and the campus and the Oval and Old Town, the whole Fort Collins experience. I just feel like FOCO is a very approachable town, and it's an exciting place, if you're coming from a smaller town in the Midwest, but it's not so overwhelming like going to some big city school or something like that. Like, to me, it's always kind of been the best of both worlds. I'm someone who enjoys downtown Denver. I couldn't live in it though. This pace of life is much more my vibe. And again, speaking very generally here, I've always just felt like that is in line, with people coming from Kansas and Minnesota and the Midwest, and it makes sense why so many of them end up in Colorado. Anyways, got kind of off on a tangent there, but he visited Oregon State on May 16th, visited CSU a couple of days back, decided to commit. You love that he's already, visited some future Pac-12 schools and come to Fort Collins and decided this is where I want to spend my future. He's a top 50 tight end nationally. He's a top 10 player coming out of Kansas for the 2026 cycle. Has offers from Oregon State, who he's visited, Washington State, Texas State, Wake Forest, New Mexico, Marshall, among others. Diving into the numbers, he had 24 catches for 512 yards, 6 touchdowns the last 2 seasons, averaged 6.7 yards per carry too. They do some stuff where they'd line him up as an H-back or, do an end around touches and stuff like that. Just kind of take advantage of his athleticism. When you watch him on Huddle, they line him up all over, but there's a lot of instances where it's just like he is the biggest, tallest, strongest kid on the field. We are going to flex him out wide solo. We're going to throw the ball up in the air, and there's not anybody on the field who's even remotely big enough to be able to stop him. It's not going to be like that at this level, obviously, but he does fit that mold of a Cole Turner style tight end who you can just kind of throw it up and let him go get it. We're hoping that Jackson Warren can be that guy for the offense this year. We've seen it a little bit in practice, so I know that he has that capability. It's all just going to come down to, being fully cleared and staying healthy and all that. It was unfortunate he ended up missing last season with that shoulder injury. But I think Morrell can be very similar. 6'6", 205. He's going to put some muscle on. A couple years from now, that's probably more like 6'6", 6'7", 225, 230. He's going to be a handful to deal with, particularly, in the Pac-12. I'm going to have to get used to saying that instead of the Mountain West. It's going to be a little bit weird. But I'm really intrigued by his athletic profile. Yeah, he's going to have some stuff he's going to have to refine. He's going to have to become a much more consistent and complete route runner. He's going to have to be able to do a lot more than what he was doing in that Pratt's, high school offense. But there's a lot to like, and it's a bit of a cliche at times, but you can't teach or coach that type of size and athleticism. He's going to have a well-rounded athletic profile, which I love. Fits the mold of what Norvell and the staff have always prioritized, which is being a multi-sport athlete. He's scored over 1,000 points in basketball as kind of he's a big man. He's basically playing the 5 for them, but he'd be basically like a stretch 4, like if he was being recruited to play basketball, I think. But he scored over 1,000 points. He's a track star as well. I love that. I love bringing in these kids that do a little bit of everything. I just think it benefits them so much. That's not to bash anybody that specializes or anything like that. It's teach their own. I think it's a different scenario. If you're going to be a high school pitcher, a quarterback or something like that, like there are certain instances where I do think it maybe makes a little bit more sense to specialize in that one sport and really just hone on that one craft and try and lock it down, especially for like receivers, tight ends. I like guys that play basketball. I like guys who participate in track because they're going to be more explosive. They're going to be quicker. They're going to have better lateral movement. Like there are just so many benefits to playing different sports on top of just the simple notion that it's just fun and you're going to have a good time. Like you're not going to get burned out on your one sport because you are able to experience all these different things. I like him. I'm excited about what he could be in this offense. CSU obviously has a really strong track record of developing tight ends, which I'd have to imagine is something they double down on pretty consistently. They're recruiting a lot of tight ends. We'll talk about that here in just a second. A couple other guys to keep your eye on the recruiting trail. But, if you're CSU, you'd say, look at Joel Dreesen, look at Corey Sperry, look at Crockett Gilmore and Trey McBride and Dallin Holker. That's just over like the last 15, 20 years. All these guys they've been able to bring in, develop, and send to the NFL. We had the moniker wide receiver U for a while, but really, you look at the success and the history and the lineage, like CSU might be tight end U if we're really being honest with ourselves, or O-line U at one point as well. We're going to keep this rolling. We're going to keep talking recruits. I'm going to give out a couple of names that you guys should keep an eye on. But let me shout out a couple of other partners here before we get out. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota's built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the 2024 Tacoma. The Land Cruiser is iconic. It's back as well. Toyota's got 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive like the Epic 4Runner. They also got more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics, the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. Volo is Denver's most popular provider of adults social sports leagues. They've got pickup games and events. Some of their sports offered include soccer, volleyball, pickleball, kickball, basketball, cornhole, and many more. Is cornhole a sport? I don't know if is it a sport if you generally are supposed to play
it. It's a sport.
It is on ESPN. That's a good point, Tiff. I don't know. It feels like something you'd see in dodgeball. ESPN 8 the Ocho or something like that. But hey, I guess it's a sport. I won't be a hater. You can play it with a beer in hand, but why not? Darts are similar argument. Anyways, playing with Volo is a great way to meet new people, make friends, be social. It's a great way to be more active, spend time in your community. You can play in Lodo, Rhino, Highlands, City Park, Cherry Creek, South Broadway, and more. You can sign up as a free agent. If you have an entire team, you can go in that way. Doesn't matter if you're a group of 1, if you're a group of 4 or 5. There's leagues for all abilities and backgrounds. Everybody's welcome to join. Use that code DNVR10 for $10 off any Volo Denver league. Again, that code DNVR10 for $10 off any Volo Denver league. All right. Before we get out of here, I did want to give you guys just a couple of names to keep an eye on. Have just been kind of perusing the interwebs, went on On3 and 247 as well, doing a little bit of research. To summarize the 2026 class so far, quarterback Darnell Kelly, he's out of Langston Hughes High School in Georgia, 6'2", 185-pound dual threat QB. You've got Arley Morrell out of Pratt, Kansas, 6'6", 205. And then 3 offensive linemen, Alexander Brewer, who's out of Sequoia in Georgia, 6'4", 295. Jace Winchester, Dakota Ridge product in Littleton, 6'3", 275-pound interior O-lineman. And then Jacob McCray, a 6'4", 285-pound offensive tackle out of Allen, Texas, and Allen High School, where Isaiah Stevens went back in the day, if that name sounds familiar. Some names that you guys should keep an eye on here. One guy I've kind of been watching, and he's technically committed to San Diego State at the moment, but is scheduled to visit here this weekend. Troy Foster. He's a 6'3", 205-pound wide receiver out of Huntington Beach. Kid's a beast. He had a phenomenal junior year, 65 catches for about 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. Returned a couple of kicks for scores as well, so 17 total touchdowns as a junior. Really like him. I like how he moves. Think he's really versatile, pretty refined as a route runner for his age. He's somebody to keep an eye on. Can CSU flip SDSU commit Troy Foster? We shall see. Another guy that I've got my eyes on is Kai Wesley, 6'7", 235-pound tight end out of Orem, Utah. If you missed it, he recently released his top 5. CSU and some pretty nice company there. He's got Baylor, Boise State, Washington, and Florida State, along with CSU for his top 5 schools. So he's somebody to keep an eye on as well. I have heard from some friends behind the scenes who have some relationships there. I know a lot of people working hard to try and get Kai Wesley to land at CSU. Jude Nelson is another tight end who I have my eyes on, 6'4", 220 pounds. He's out of Millikan High School. I believe that's in Long Beach. He's somebody who's got a lot of interest as well. Recently visited Boise State, recently took his official visit to CSU. He's a really intriguing prospect, another big athletic guy. The Rams are really going after some significant athletic profiles with the skill positions this year. If you're looking for a local name to follow, Atticus Tillman, safety out of Arvada West. He's somebody who I do expect to commit, so keep an eye on him. I believe he's got his OV coming up here pretty soon as well. Those are just some guys to keep an eye on. Again, we're going to focus on recruiting pretty heavily here throughout June. This is when the 2026 class should really start to come together. I'm going to get some written content out, go in depth on these O-linemen. Obviously, we'll talk about Darnell Kelly. I'm hoping to get him on the podcast here pretty soon. But we should say congratulations, I suppose, to the 2026 commits so far, including Arley Morrell, most recent 3-star commit at tight end out of Pratt, Kansas. Before we get out of here, if you got any questions, comments, etc., get them in the Toyota chat. I'll respond to as many before we call it a day. We'll be going live next week, Thursday, so about a week until we go live again. Hopefully we'll have plenty of recruiting news to dive into. Thursday and Friday we'll be going live next week. After that, we should get back to our typical Wednesday, Friday schedule for the summer. I wanted to have just a little bit of fun at the end here, and I thought we could do just kind of a power ranking of Colorado spots in the summer, the spots I find most enjoyable. I do want to add the caveat that I didn't include Fort Collins only because I'm living on basically the Fort Collins-Loveland border now. It is perfection. No offense to the CSU students, but Fort Collins is so much better when a lot of the students are home, and that's just because there's less traffic. You can get in anywhere you want. Old Town, it's just so quiet. That's what I love about Fort Collins in the summer, on top of, you know, a lot of what I talked about before with the perfect vibes. I didn't include Denver either. I will say Cap Hill, you know, I think is great in the summer. You know, go have some ice cream, walk around. I know it's not, Denver's changed a lot over the years, and I'm not going to get into the politics or anything like that. Like, there's some stuff I don't necessarily always love about it. But I mean, Denver too is really a gorgeous city with a lot of character, and there's a lot of fun stuff to do. So I did want to throw that out. But I figured this would be more from like a vacation standpoint, you know, being able to go and visit some places. So I guess we'll start at 5 or work our way down. Estes Park It's probably the biggest tourist trap that I've got on the list. Can be a little bit overwhelming occasionally if you go in on the wrong day. Can take you forever to get in and out. But also, there's just a lot of great spots. It's what's nice about Estes is you can go up and kind of feel like you're getting the Colorado mountain town experience, but it's close enough that you don't have to deal with the commitment of, going to Rocky Mountain National Park or something like that, which is admittedly incredible. And we'll get to somewhere that fits that description. But Estes Park, a little bit more approachable. You can make a day trip out of it, even if you're only spending like a half day. It doesn't feel like you had to spend the whole day in the car at that point. I used to go there a couple times in the summer growing up. There used to be this really cool sports memorabilia shop that I got all kinds of crap at. I don't know if it's still open. But I'm a sucker for Estes Park. I've worked a lot of weddings there in the summer back in my catering days, and the views are tough to beat, especially at like sunset. Number 4, we're gonna go Morrison. I grew up in Lakewood. My high school graduation was at Red Rocks, which I was really fortunate. I used to work out at Red Rocks, like every day in the summer. I would go up there, run the stairs back when I was actually in shape. But Morrison is super underrated. You got to watch your speed, constant speed traps. The Popo, they will get you. But there's, like nice little breakfast cafes, some underrated, Mexican spots out there. I'm a sucker for Morrison. Going to a concert at Red Rocks, like that's as Colorado as it gets. It's in the summer in particular. It's pretty tough to beat. Some fun hiking trails as well. 3, we're going Vail. I am far too poor to be in Vail in the wintertime. It's just not happening. Can't afford that. I wish I could. Would love to hit the ski slopes. Would be awesome. But to me, Vail in the summer, and it's always going to be a tourist trap, but it feels a little bit more approachable. I feel like that's when a lot of the locals are able to enjoy Vail. Like that's when the Colorado natives are able to go out and enjoy the experience. So I love going to Vail every summer, spending some time with my family, going into town, hitting up Pazzo's Pizza, the Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. I mean, it's just a great way to spend a summer day, particularly like August, at the best time of year. Tough to beat. Number 2, I am a sucker for the Western Slope. This one might be a head scratcher for some, but I'm telling you, the Grand Mesa National Forest, some of those towns out there, Ouray, like it just is so underrated. It is a commitment. It takes a long time to get out there, especially if you get caught in, holiday traffic or something like that on I-70. It can be a bit of a trek, but you got wine country out there. You got biking trails. You've got places to go river rafting and camping. There's all kinds of cool little restaurants where you can have, like homemade peach and just all kinds of great stuff. Like I love the Western Slope. Highly, highly underrated, in particular in the summer. Number 1, my favorite spot in all of Colorado, that is Grand Lake. My grandparents used to live up there for a while. Unfortunately, back in the what was it, East Troublesome Fires or whatever it was called a couple years back, that property no longer exists. I don't think really their neighborhood exists anymore. It completely changed the landscape and everything. It's overwhelming when you see it to like know what it used to look like. But in terms of views, I would argue that Grand Lake is the prettiest place in the world. And I'm not a super well-traveled person. I've got plenty to do in the coming years, but there's just something about it that I have such a soft spot in my heart for. So many memories associated with it. The views are gorgeous. I mean, it really feels like heaven on earth. And if there was one place that somebody was like, where do I have to go to understand why people are so obsessed with Colorado and the mountains? Like, why are you guys all so crazy about this? It would be Grand Lake. I just think, the views, it's when I feel the most spiritual, like not to get too corny on you or anything like that. I'm not a go to church type person. I am a person of faith for whatever it's worth, but that is when like I feel the most connected to the earth and like something greater than myself. And it's just like almost overwhelming when you look at the scenes up there and all the trees and the water and you see the fish and the moose and It's just perfect. It's everything I love about Colorado, and I love that it hasn't been completely overtaken by, tourists and transplants and all the other typical stuff you hear us Colorado natives whine over. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Shout out to everybody that's been rocking with us in the off season. I'm stoked that we're getting closer and closer to football season. I cannot wait. Big year for CSU. Much love to our super producer Tiff behind the scenes, making this all possible. We are always proud to be y'all. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.